Not knowing how to read an L with a slash.
Live finally. All right. So let's do. So what I did is I basically looked at all the reviews that are marked as 2-1. So if yours is not on here, it might be because it's not. But I suggest we walk them in some priority order, which we probably make up as we go. But is there anything that is super important that we should look at first from these things here? That we think needs more
the first thing.
Yeah.
Might be biased, but yes.
Number.
Well, you ask a question, the answer.
Was it Charles' question? Was it not?
And the syndication.
So, Pavel, I never proposed that IMemoryList was an interface.
We had an implementation, and you had an interface.
Yeah, but it's not that I pushed for it. It was an accident of
You always
I
want
pushed for the own memory.
You always want things to be implemented on things.
Well, no.
That's your
own memory, yes. But then we decided that one of the API reviews to not do it because basically we would need to have read-only memory to implement it.
If you're fine with it.
So let's just do the syndication one first because I think nobody here really cares much about this.
I super care about this. Let me see.
So let's actually just approve that the API move on with our lives.
Just reject it if nobody cares.
Sorry?
Just reject it if nobody cares.
No. As in, like, clearly we did it for a reason. I think that was something.
Oh, you mean this one? Okay.
This one.
Yeah.
And we should just.
I think it was S.
But then we decided. What was this?
This was me again, like not reviewing the audio like as usual. Alright, so I think last time when we reviewed this, they had this shape here, and then we said construct the generics that have like 3 strings, and nobody knows what these things. They should just make it a named one. And that's what they did. Yeah, I think normal funcs work when the arguments are obvious. Once you take string, some enum, it's like, great, what's your second string again? I don't know what that is.
No, drag tabs are fine. There is no perf to be gained here.
I know.
So.
Well, there's usability to be gained, right?
There's that.
We should type all the parameters as objects. Then it would be
just dictionary string to object.
Almost as performant and we could reuse it everywhere.
I guess it's fine.
That's nice.
So the only thing I'm thinking, so it's a syndication namespace. Is the delegate more generic, like user parser, URI parser delegate?
I mean, my only ship would be able to name it delegate, but like besides from that, I think it's specific to XML more than anything, right?
Okay, then.
But yeah, I mean, the whole namespace is about parsing XML.
The name is pretty generic, but it's so long that probably it's fine. And you're right, it shouldn't be called delegate. It should be
strip the delegate suffix and call it.
It should be called callback.
What?
According to our naming guidelines.
No. Callback.
Something like this.
Delegate callback?
No, URI parser callback.
Why not just URI parser?
Because I'm pretty sure we're going to have a URI parser that is not going to be a delegate.
In the syndication namespace, though.
Have you ever tried to use components where there are types with the same name in different namespaces?
Yeah, but how often do you ever using for syndication? To begin with. Like,
I see, you never use syndication.
Like once in my life, I think I did. I don't know. I think it's very narrow, and like it's not. Like I think it's really bad when the namespaces are commonly imported, but like once that they say you just import one sentence.
Well, you have a delegate per thing you want to parse. Won't this just grow until they like add all the types that they want to add hooks for parsing?
No, the problem that they have is apparently they're like I forgot the exact scenario, but effectively what ends up happening is that as it is with internet things, they're not super well defined. And so they basically have like a default handling for datetime, but there are some feeds that have some wacky parsing rules, and they're like, well, here's a callback that you can supply to whatever parsing. And like apparently the rest in Atom or whatever the thing is implemented is fixed. Like fixed. So I don't think. I mean, I think we asked the same question. Like we eventually end up like 20 delegates, and they said no. So I think. I don't know. Unless we have. I mean, they would just strip the suffix. What would
Names of common types, if you derive from system.delegate, add either event handler or callback depending on whether or not you're an event handler.
Did he write that rule? What year was that written in? That's why.
1772.
It did work. I don't know why they put the colon.
Oh, and do not add the suffix delegate to a delegate.
Thank you very much, Jackie.
I'm just
Exactly, I told
I'm
them.
just reading what we wrote on the web.
It's because he wrote this is what Christopher wrote in that book. That's weird.
And if he doesn't like it, he says Brad
Okay.
wrote it.
Some of the guidelines I just wrote them down, and some of them I kind of,
This is the danger of writing things down. They form some kind of permanence.
I remember that.
This is why we don't document anything.
Page 4,
if I was writing,
section 6.
if I was not just writing down the conventions that already existed about delegates, the guideline would be don't use delegates.
Use func. Always prefer func.
We didn't have that at the time.
We need to update the book. The book is like outdated now.
Would you want to team up?
Awesome, I'll do it.
Oh, you want to do it?
Yeah, do it.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Which is the kind that gets more royalties?
Because the publisher has been asking me for a very long time
It's time
for an update.
You should do it.
Except it's so labor intensive
Is it?
that I'm looking for somebody to help me with.
Oh, David is not the person.
Oh my god.
David is a workaholic, so like it's
my
actually
gosh.
a good match with me. A lazy person with a workaholic.
Let's talk with
Christoph, if you ever do that, I'm willing to help you too.
Nice!
Ooh.
Nice, we got good
Awesome.
volunteers. Do not name your methods async. Do. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Just make everything async.
Everything async.
Alright, so then we have done that.
What about the name of the argument? The URI, capital URI, that stuff? Is that okay? Namespace URI. All Roman.
What's wrong with it?
Usually we would write the R and the I lowercase.
Lowercase. Again, like, I'm not pushing, I'm just asking, what's the guidance?
Well, the last argument is the delegate that is now called a callback
Oh, this one. Yeah, we should lowercase that.
in both of them.
Alright, so then shoot. Alright, so and I'm on hold again. This is not going well. I hate this. Used to work last week, like
Would you break?
I don't know.
Alright, the title of this this issue is a bit confusing. It basically should say, change IMemoryList to an abstract class.
Well, with concrete members.
With concrete members. And
The entire point is to make it inlineable, so there's no virtual calls. And it's super fast.
we need better name. ReadOnlySequenceSegment is what it is.
Kind of what it is, right?
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's a segment of the.
Who derives from this type? Like, what are the concrete derivations?
There's one today, and the one test.
Yeah.
Does it. In pipes, we have a buffer segment. That is a segment of the list in the pipe itself. So that is the only one we have today. I think that's real.
Basically, if you want to provide a source of multi-segmented read-only sequences, you have to implement it. And the only thing that's provided right now is pipelines. That's why we have a single implementation.
CoreFX Lab might have some as well, but nothing in CoreFX today that we brought over.
It really stops being an abstraction. It's just a POCO that forces you to inherit from it.
Yeah.
And set properties privately.
You
And
inherit from it to
be able to set things.
To be able to store some context and additional data.
Oh, you don't even. Sometimes you don't even need a context. Like this, if you inherit from it and make everything public, it'll work as is. Like you don't have to add more things.
You don't have to know, but
yeah. So it's fully
So actually, if we don't think that we need to add additional data, why don't we make it a struct and then you can store it in like a bunch of those in an array?
Yeah, because it has next pointer and then it gets boxed and like struct cannot be recursive, and that also hurts.
Well, it would have to like Yeah, I guess it would have to take an index of the next one.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah, right.
by taking this, we'll drop all idea abstractions and even ideas of the things might not be linked lists.
Yeah.
We say that it's on a linked list. You cannot implement it on array. I mean, you can put things into array, but you still have to allocate an object per node. Which it is right now. We were trying to lie to ourselves that things might be different.
Yeah, so this is basically making a linked list.
Yeah. It basically means that read-only-sequence can either support array,
own memory,
or one of these things.
Or string.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those four. Nothing else.
Yep.
If we ever want to add more in the future, it basically would have some performance cost or some
other. We'll like merge array and own memory into one bit thing and like try cast there.
Yeah.
Or string.
In the green added example where I think Ben was changing this over to use the new APIs.
Yep.
Why does the drive type have to store next if the base is storing next? Is that just an optimization? You want to store the field twice to avoid a cast or something?
Ben's wrong. His example. Because it stores the exact implementation to avoid the cast, right?
Yeah.
When you walk segments, you don't want to cast next to yourself every time, so you store typed next segment reference and.
I see. And these all have setters rather than just being constructor arguments because we expect these to be pooled and reused or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are pulled in the current
implementation.
In the pipe.
Yeah, so I kind of, I said it in the comment. I think I called it Franken design. We kind of ended up in the middle. Yeah. It's neither fast, neither flexible, and I think this one has some negatives. It constrains what read-only-sequence can represent, but at least it goes all the way to for perf.
Yep. Okay, what about your idea of, not your idea, the bug you assigned and the one I tried to fix with GetPosition, with get offset?
We could still do this with this one, correct?
I said, yeah.
Yeah, it's completely independent.
You can. So the only thing is the sequence would have to know when to call that method versus just skip it and use the actual.
Yeah, because that method would be virtual.
Yeah. And you want to avoid virtual calls in the fast path, so you could cheat and say if this thing wasn't overridden, then use next and skip the call.
If type equals.
If type equals, I don't know, something crazy.
Yeah.
We do hassle that all the time.
Mm.
Okay, I guess. But we are gonna close it for now then, I think.
Yep.
It's fast enough, and that guy. With this, it will be pretty fast, even without get.
Well, still, random access is not as fast.
No, you can't. Yeah, it's not.
So I would still try to.
Ben did do measurements on that guy's benchmark, and he didn't show that the results compared to his benchmark, but I think he got. It wasn't 2x; it was 1.46x, slower than the original thing.
Yeah. It's getting to a reasonable place, but it would be so nice if basically random access into read-only sequence was 01.
It depends, because if it's only, imagine you have 2 GB blocks like that guy has. Yeah. If you have a lot of data, you have large segments. If you have large segments, you don't have a lot of them, and then virtual call versus 7 traverses of that pointer.
That's the argument.
Yeah, I would say virtual call is more expensive, but not 7 traversals of memory that is very far away and probably not hard.
You're still doing, I guess.
It's fine. So maybe in the future we either add to this class, or we add an interface that this thing can implement. That's someone downcast to and says if you can seek, then I can.
No, downcasts in read-only-sequence do not work.
That's if ads. But for this thing?
No, it's like we are storing bits to avoid casts. So adding another downcast would make it worse.
I would say let's go with this one, and let's kind of try to do the seek
on top of it.
Okay.
Okay,
if we cannot do it, it's too bad. But I would not give it up because honestly, when you have 2 gigs, also, segments of 2 gigs, they may be even like paged out.
Yes.
So having to traverse all of them so you can get to the 10th one would be super costly actually.
Memory is stored separately from the segment.
Oh, you would only traverse these.
You only traverse
the noise, yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
This is ready for review.
Yes, it's done.
I guess we're still talking about all the games.
A separate.
This is about a separate PR that he has opened, which basically this would affect it.
So this is good.
What about names? Do we like read-only-sequence segment name?
It's super nice because it actually
it says what it is. Yeah. No lies.
Yep.
Good job, Ben. We're convinced.
Okay.
Oh, he was fighting with himself actually.
No, we were in Twitter last
On
night.
chat over here, pushing back.
He did
against the protector.
thumbs down to his own proposal.
Yeah, something like that.
Too late, Ben.
So how far are we with the whole pipelines? Are we ready? Is it the API surface final with this one?
As final as
we can do in
everything else in the framework.
There's one more big change, which is the value task, value awaitable.
Yeah, I saw
There's that one, and then that's kind of the biggest one.
Yeah, I mean,
because now you talk about like implementing something on top that we will see and that stuff, which makes me a little bit uneasy.
It's all internal. So this is transparent to the last one we just did.
We just did was public.
No.
It's transparent to the use of pipelines. Okay. Yeah, it's a base class switch, and then it's nothing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So is this related to this one that we just talked about?
No, different.
yeah, but it's
It seems closer than the other one.
So Stefan was the only one that had a lot of pushback because of the ordering of parameters.
Yeah.
What usually wins in these arguments,
Okay, so
consistency
maybe
of ordering of
scroll down. Scroll down.
yeah, then it's the set.
Scroll down. Basically, no, up a bit. There's like an API proposal. Okay, here, I did the comment. So we want to add an overload, GetPosition that takes just an int. No.
Yes. That's right.
Just an int. Today we have overload that takes int and a position. Sequence start is a position. But the parameters in this overload are actually reversed. Today they are different than what the sample shows. The position is first and then the int. So I was basically saying that if we add an int overload, they should be in order. Like int is always first, and then position is optional.
Then it'll match stream.seek, so that seems good.
Yeah. That's what the argument was, but then the argument against it was it's weird to have an API where you want to add to a offset, and the offset is first.
Except for stream.seek, where you tell it how much to seek and then say from the beginning or from the current position. This is exactly stream.seek.
Sure.
What's the basis should come second.
Maybe.
Or we could make it.
Well, I'm like
seek. That's what I'm saying.
Also,
matching Christoph's, the overload says the int should be first, and stream.seek says the int should be first.
I get it. Yeah.
English says it should be the other way, but English never wins in these arguments.
I think it's fine, and I don't have a pushback. I think Stefan's argument, he's skiing somewhere in the snow.
He's in the better place.
Was that the stream itself has an enum where to start from, origin and wherever. This is more like an integer, and this operation is offset plus pointer plus offset.
Yeah, but it's almost the same thing.
Is bizarre.
The offset argument. You don't pass.
Start isn't like it's not like stream as in you're saying start from the origin. It's more like I'm passing in a number and I want you to add the offset to that number.
But the type
the position is a pointer itself.
But the type is
start is actually not an enum. It's actually
it's a pointer.
I see.
No. But what it is, it's actually the type of this sequence start is sequence position.
Yes.
Nobody knows whether it's an enum or it looks like an enum.
It's a pointer.
Well, let's not spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine to.
The only person who's against it is not here.
It's fine.
We've been.
I'm not fighting it.
We've been devil's advocates for a long
Skiing,
time.
so his brain has too much oxygen.
Yeah.
Oh, if he's high enough, then maybe not.
He's gonna go and watch this and go, oh, I hate you guys.
I think it looks.
Unless he's in Colorado, then his brain doesn't have enough.
Yeah, last year he was in Colorado. No, this year he's in Utah, I think.
Utah?
Yeah.
What? I can edit it? What's going on?
Yeah, I used to go to Colorado, and like for the first few days, I had like headaches, my nose would bleed, and from skiing at 10,000 feet.
We deduced. Did you leave comments on the YouTube? Is he like watching on YouTube? I hope not.
And what is sound? It's the prime time. On the morning, shredding. Wow.
Nice.
Done. I like it. We're getting somewhere.
It's easy, man.
You should ship more often. That would force the right things to happen.
Yeah, all done.
This is from Bench. We just reject based on principle. We gave him one, or we take one.
Yeah, so this one, I read this one. So basically, when you have read-only memory, it's over a string. It represents potentially a segment, like subset of the string characters. But when you call try_get_string, it gives you the whole string, and then it tells you, it also gives you two integers and tells you, like, please don't look at anything outside of the range that, I gave you. Same with array segment. Array segment is not super safe. It gives you, a subset of an array, but you have access to the whole array if you really want. Right. So today the APIs are on memory extensions, and Ben's argument is because the APIs break encapsulation or information hiding. Yeah. Which one?
They'll let you break your bounds.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I would say the argument holds.
So he's saying they should be on MemoryMarshal. Yeah, I would say that I'm not sure if that's what MemoryMarshal is for. MemoryMarshal is for unsafe operations.
No, I think
it's kind of unsafe.
I think if you marshal between, let's say, you have a read-only span of char, and you get back a span of char, it's the same thing. You're not supposed to write to this. No, you get back something that you can write to. I'm not supposed to read from things. I'm not supposed to read.
Well,
you're not.
Well, this one. Yeah, this one is about reading only. It doesn't give you access from read only to read write.
But it does give you the string, the entire string.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it lets you. This is out of bounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Makes sense on MemoryMarshal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just groups methods. Like, I want to get something from memory. That's where I go.
I mean, how often do you have to do that? Let me start with this.
You're interrupting with existing APIs.
Exactly.
Makes it a marshalling
problem. To me, interrupt is something that I'm fine with. I'm fine. Called marshal.
Well, I shouldn't say interrupt in the sense like typical pinvoke interrupt.
No, I know.
Calling existing methods, right?
Fine. We will reject next to Ben's.
Hit a counter.
I have one question. Can you go back up, Emo?
Sorry?
Can you go back up to the API?
Yep. I can figure out how to do it, yep.
So for try_get_array, it takes a memory called read-only memory?
But it isn't the memory, isn't the read-only memory.
Oh, yeah. The name of the parameter is wrong. Copy and paste error.
Do we have a... Let's see. Yeah, this one here.
The second...
Array for read-only memory?
No, I'm not sure.
Because then should we also move that?
We're doing MemoryMarshal, right?
We do, yeah.
That one is probably already there because that one is kind of unsafe already.
It's super confusing, the overload sometimes. Well, what should it be on? Memory or read-only memory?
If it's not safe, you see or write more than...
So try_get_array, as of Emo's last import, is a member on memory. It's not an extension.
Yes, for memory, but for read-only, I think it you have to call Marshal.TryGetArray.
We do.
You know the one that gives you from read-only memory.
That's the
gives
one
you
that's sensitive.
the array.
So we already have TryGetArray on MemoryMarshal for read-only memory, and there's an implicit cast from memory to read-only memory. Do we need the second one, or we just get rid of the instance method?
Yeah, that's actually a good point too. Since it's not an extension method, we don't have the issue with having to have the exact type.
So this one is covered by what?
We basically have this method that takes read-only memory as the first parameter.
MemoryMarshal has TryGetArray of T that takes a read-only memory of T. That's all.
Oh, I see.
Is memory cast optimized anywhere? Like memory to read-only memory?
Not super. But do we?
I don't think it's optimized.
Are we good?
It's just an unsafe as, isn't it?
Is it today? No.
I think I already made that change.
Is it? Okay. There was a thing about converting from array to span is not very fast. The code gen is bad. So I might then...
I mean, it's all degrees, correct? It depends how fast. What you mean by fast?
Bad code generate what he was focused on.
No.
It's this much code versus
no.
this much code. Like this much.
Really?
Yep. There's the issue on there's the issue for it.
Oh.
That Andy was like talking
Well, I think the reason Ben moved it here is because this one exists on memory right now. So we just killed this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so are we getting rid of the instance method on memory?
Yes. Well,
that's fine.
It will break.
That is actually the. I mean, isn't this the core of the proposal?
We do. Don't we call MemoryMarshal?
I mean,
No, it wasn't on memory.
I'm just making sure that that was included.
Do you have span API that get you back array segment?
No. You cannot get. Yeah, we were trying to implement. You remember you were trying to implement toString to be just return the string, and you cannot.
Yeah.
Span is a black hole.
Dead end.
Span is a black hole.
Dead end.
It's constructor is the event horizon.
But anything else?
Just for clarity, we also removed the method on memory extension, right?
Yeah, that was. I guess that's fair. Like that was to me it was implied.
So Asan, since some of these changes cross repo boundaries, you should kind of scream if you think that any of these are longer than a couple of hours of work.
Everything that requires a repo boundary will take more than a couple of hours work.
I know, so scream. I wonder whether a better way not to do those is to first add new APIs, move the whole world to the new API, and then remove the old ones. Then you don't have to deal with the world being broken.
We'll talk about that stuff. That work here like that. It's more like technical stuff how to do it. But anything else? Otherwise, just improve it and move on.
Yes, that's fine.
Right. So let's do this. So we actually have a chance to walk into this. Right, so now this one was one of these more contentious issues, right? So we can easily flip over the remaining hour with that. Is there anything else we need to look at first?
So 27329 should be very fast. We can just do that quickly.
Which one is that?
The middle.
Actually, let's just do the top one. That's should be fast.
The top one.
Approved.
Yeah.
Okay, so we already added a new API in 2.1, and I'm just suggesting we change the signature to something else. We added the top thing a few months ago using the same delegate that Threadpool uses for its other QueueUserWorkItem and taking an object, but it'd be much more general and applicable and less allocatey if we instead just took a generic delegate and a generic state.
Seems nobody disagrees with that. So let's just
super approved. That.
I'm trying really hard to come up with a dissenting opinion. Consistency? Yeah, that one.
Third issue.
It's been said.
I think the last one was also easy.
Oh, this one.
Oh, yes.
In 2.1?
Is this the magic
nice
code segment pointer thing?
Yeah.
Get read-only span from template.
Yeah.
Why does the API stutter?
Okay. How would we implement this feature? The API is simple and it's probably also a rubber stamp. How do we implement this?
You mean portable or just in general?
Internal call.
Yeah.
Portable.
Portable, I don't think it works portable, right?
So how would it work?
It's probably a runtime call. I don't know how array works, but it's probably a runtime call, I would guess.
It would be netcorrupt only.
Is it? Really?
Do we
If it has to be an internal call, then...
We already have surface area for netcorrupt only.
Yeah. Well, surface area?
Create. Like they just create, they can create.
Because you know, like this method would basically not be implementable
Portable.
as a portable API.
Could you even, I mean, you can't really call it anyway, right? The compiler will emit it.
It'll be a call to
span type that can...
Yeah, exactly.
If compiler would emit it, it has to be portable.
Span portable.
I mean, then if you happen to...
But I would ask you.
It can get a copy, can't it?
Oh.
You did mention that if some runtimes don't have it right away, it's fine.
It could do a copy, right? Instead, yeah. So
How would it detect?
Are there new APIs to be added for...
You would ship a library that implements the API, and you would just call that.
No, compiler has to emit either call or the thing it's doing right now.
No, I think the idea is if you have this, if you have this particular API available to you at compiler,
I see.
Yeah.
Then it'll emit it.
That's how it normally works.
Statically known by the
I'm not used to this working based on the TFM.
Although, like,
if you target TFM, you get an API and then it calls it.
Didn't we add that thing that the compiler can detect runtime features specifically for this? But this is an API, so I guess it's fine.
So who's gonna implement it?
Jan.
Vladimir or Jan?
Jan. I was guessing.
Well, I think what he's saying is that there's like the compiler will call this thing, right?
Yes.
When you write a literal, so they're willing to do that work.
Yeah, well, they are willing to do the work in the compiler. Who's gonna add this API?
Jan?
Jan, probably.
I mean,
I would read it.
like as far as this room's concerned, it's just like, is this the right API for the compiler to call? And whether or not Jan or someone else
Did
gets
Jan
around
comment?
to it by tomorrow
Let's go down.
is
Yeah, Jan added some comments. I didn't parse them completely. Oh,
That
not here.
didn't parse it at all.
Let's assign it to him and say it's approved.
Let's do this and say.
It's not needed. It's not strictly needed.
because it should just be able to write it to the data segment and then just write a pointer-based span pointing it. Be like,
Doesn't Array do this today? Array has that same thing, right?
Yeah, there's some. I forgot what the array method is, but there's something that the compiler emits a call for.
It's initialize array.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing.
Alright, if we could, this feature is so awesome.
Yeah, we can do this. In 2.1, we can do it.
But let's chase it up offline on email.
I don't know. This one is so. We'll see.
It seems emailable.
Karel, how should we think about these API changes versus schedule and?
We're good to go for another month.
We just approve, correct? Like if API is correct, whoever does the work then.
In 2.1, it's up to
the person who works. Okay, fine.
Right. So next one then. This one I think is something that Jan also proposed we should be doing. Oh god.
Oh, this one.
It's only to himself, so I guess.
I think there was an API shape on here. Yeah, that was the one.
One of those things that by the time you call it, you don't know that it's the right answer anymore.
Don't we have an API like this?
No, this is.
What?
I can't remember where it's used.
What's the difference
it's
between
used
this
in
one
the
and?
array
Between this one and
We already have something like processor count or something.
Well, this is
number.
This is which processor am I running on right now?
It's
I think we use it to like.
So you asked the question, and if you didn't set affinity, then
don't we have it?
The next line of code, you might be on a different processor.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally is like we use it internally just as a best guess. For example, if we have a partitioned data structure and we're trying to kind of minimize contention, we have an internal implementation of this that we call, and we use it to determine which partition to go to. It doesn't matter if we end up hopping processors afterwards. It's just sort of best guess.
If there's a consistent notion of a processor identifier being an integer across the platforms we care about, then it seems fine. Who cares if people use it wrong?
But what? So why is it on environment?
Yeah, that's
Shouldn't it be
because
on like
process count is there.
Process count is there, Kerman-Stadt ID is there, just sounds like this way you would put it.
We just don't have, we have thread where we can put thread ID on, but we don't have processor that we could put the processor things in. That's why everything goes on environment.
Process.
No, but isn't it the processor on which the current thread is running?
Yes, but the thing is, the processor can change, like between the time where the method is actually being invoked and the time where you get the return value in EAX.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it seems like you don't want to have unstable methods on environment.
Well, but as Steve was saying, it's kind of like just an optimization. Like, if you happen to be lucky and the int doesn't change, it works better. Otherwise, it too bad. You take some.
Environment seems like the wrong class for this.
Oh, about to say it should be called approximate.
It should be on
called approximate current processor.
You're already used to things.
Yeah, exactly. Why isn't it on thread? Like, current processor ID.
So thread.
Let's first decide on what the API is, because there's already contention on
approximate current.
Dangerous get processor ID.
Can you ask what processor another thread's on? Probably not.
Well, it would be a static.
Well, that's what I was wondering if it should be instance or static. Is can you ask about another thread?
Oh, if you have to get thread instance to get processor, then it's like
deschedule.
Yeah.
So.
This got closed and reopened like 50 times. What happened there?
Probably because he hit close with comment. Comment.
It should not be an environment. I don't think so. New aware thread pool. See all these link bugs.
So Steven, you follow this closer. Like, is it fair to say that we don't have? All right, here's the final proposal, I guess. Is that what we all agree on is the right thing then?
Should be on thread.
No, it should
be. Like, ignoring this particular thing, I think this is mostly about like what do we actually expose rather than.
Does it make sense as a property instead of a method?
Steven, are you still there? Should I pause you?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, because you were commenting on that thing.
As a static property, I think it's fine. I don't care if it's on environment or thread.
To me, the static property feels more like it would never change, but a static method, I feel like it's giving the sense of like being more.
There is more promise when it's property.
To be fair, property is more consistent with what we already have. We have current managed.
We don't have a thing that gives you an answer that by the time it gives it to you, it's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, processor count can change.
So I think. I think both of these changes actually make it clearer what happens with the API, like moving it to thread and making it into a method. I think it communicates a bit better that it's not like a property of this thread. Like the thread is not affinitized to the processor, which somebody may think it is when it's a property.
Get current processor ID then?
Yeah.
I like it. I like it as a method prefix with get better than a property.
So you agree with me?
FX Cop Rule 70603. Don't make it spent. No, even though.
Well, I know that somewhere we do have the rule of like you should use a method when you need to convey like differences.
60402.
Yeah, you call it in a loop and it keeps returning different values. That's a weird property.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, if you didn't
Yeah.
If you didn't change anything in the system, it changes for you.
Yeah, put thread and a method.
Like a count of something.
Get
processor ID. Do processors have IDs or they have numbers?
Get processor ID at the moment.
Numbers. That's the thing they talked about.
We need to get to the good stuff.
Yep.
Are we there yet?
Yeah, right there. Calling the member twice in succession can produce different results.
So it would look like.
I knew there was
you
a
can
rule,
put C sharp there.
I got
sharp, right?
Why the property is
sign.
ins to everything in framework, to all public API, to all new public APIs that take slightly larger structs.
Adding in?
In.
Oh, yeah, we had a discussion about this. We decided not to do this.
Well, we said for small structs we wouldn't do it. For big ones.
Oh, for like really big ones.
Yeah. Read-only-sequence.
Yeah.
It's not small.
Public API is interesting.
Read-only-sequence? It's small.
Would it be end up with on the
4 ins.
Okay, Ben
opinion, but
in
mark
his
it
PR added.
We are clocking on him.
We don't know the shape of the API, nor do we know.
He's trying to sneak it in.
Should do it offline.
Do we cut it or do we allow it?
Were you on the PR when we had the discussion? Basically, Steve commented that there is a negative of adding in. The callers now have to call it within, and like it's weird.
But
so
it's
better to fix it in the JIT than make APIs suboptimal.
Public ones, yeah.
Now, having said that, I kind of think that there's a limit to it. Like at some point, JIT will just say no, and if the API is not usability oriented, then I think it's fine.
You don't have to pass in.
Yeah, you don't.
It's implied.
That's why it's beautiful.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're gonna change, right? So it's like
that's why it's so nice.
Especially if it's extension method, then it's even less to worry about. You don't even see it.
Yeah. That's why it's. Yeah.
We should discuss it with Steve. Since
it changes the signature when you look at it in like Reflector.
Your thoughts on that?
Also, Jan's comment was that it makes it actually perform worse on certain architectures and calling conventions. So it.
And specifically, but for bigger structs, I think it.
Oh, for bigger structs, I have like, and that's one of the main reasons it exists is for big structs.
What's bigger? Let's define bigger.
Basically, where the data can't be unregistered.
Yeah.
Influence.
So read only.
Give me a number.
Something more than like 2 registers long, maybe 3.
Give me a number.
Well, that would be 3 times the size of edit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a number. So read-only-sequence is more than that.
Yeah.
Is that really? We would just use in for all structs that are bigger than 2 ins?
I mean, I don't know if it's 2 or 3.
Too longs.
Nobody cares about 32 bits.
Yeah.
I
kind of agree too. Not for the sequence itself, but for the buffer.
I mean, if there's no...
Like, that means basically any generic struct we have, we would pass around as in. That seems really bad.
That there's a hit in terms of usability because now you have to, the call site is different. I'm hearing that the call site doesn't have to use in.
Not in C#, but if you're passing it, I guess if you're cross-language.
Yeah, if you're writing IL, like, it's a little bit more complicated. I don't know if you use...
F# doesn't have in, so like...
Oh, you're saying...
Well, when you're writing IL...
F# can silently just pass it, like generate...
When you're writing IL, passing it by in explicitly is...
Non-C# compilers might not...
To be clear, my concern wasn't really so much at the call side. My concern was just, we're adding all this guck to the method signature. So you go and look at the docs and it says in, and you say, wait, why?
Cons.
It also makes reflection type of bits if you care about that.
Yes, it does. Good.
I mean, like, I saw it on something. I don't know what it does.
It does make reflection much worse.
Yeah, if there's no usability hit on the call site,
and
you should
reflection invoke. There are problems. Aren't there problems with reflection invoke that you cannot invoke?
I don't know.
Invoke a method.
It's already broken from some of the stuff we have because we haven't updated it in like years.
Because it's wrapped, basically.
Yeah, it's wrapped.
So we can have
that. That is the thing.
That's okay.
I have no sympathy.
Me too. You should have sympathy. Not for this. Not for copy.
Signal R, right?
What? We don't call copy like we're being reflection.
Yeah, but everybody would add into everything.
Only for structs.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. We shouldn't be doing this.
Which are used super
It's just, we have some APIs that are performance focused.
Yeah.
And I think we should add in for large structs, because you shouldn't be using reflection with performance.
For structs larger than 2 longs.
Can we overload based on in? No, we can't, right?
No. You can, but you have to pass into the disambiguate.
Yeah.
The one without in always wins.
Because of the backwards compatibility.
Yeah. Ben added the PR to R to expand core, and that added tons of in like.
So that means you better not have the case where it performs better on one architecture versus on the other.
That would suck. Yeah.
Why would it perform worse if it's the same thing, just less copying?
No, yeah, had a
because the other you pass one as a pointer, the other one you pass as value. Right? You could imagine that if you put it on in a register, it might be faster than having a dereference somewhere, right?
That's what it was.
Yeah. So if, for example, you have an architecture where you have more registers available, like x64, then it would be faster to try to register as much as you can rather than to put it on stack.
Yes.
That being said, though, like you said, to assemble it at some point. Anyway,
All right.
so we talked about this one, I think, for some time. So, Stephen, do you want to give us a rundown of where we are and what the issues that we still need to close on?
Yeah. So I have not heard any dissension to the core idea. So I'd like to just consider this a given that I'm going to check something in.
Nice.
Great work.
That something is a struct that's awaitable that can represent either you already have a value or successfully completed with a value, or it represents a task or task of T, or it represents an interface that can be used to plug in your own async operation behind it. And you use this when you have a new async API like stream.readAsync. You hand one of these things back. If it completes synchronously, it can just give you back one of these things wrapping the already available value. If it completes asynchronously, as an implementation detail, it could either wrap a task if it wanted to, or if it was able to do some kind of pooling of the objects, it could maintain its own pool of these interfaces, implementations, and hand you back one of those, which allows them to be reused. We already have something that is very close to this called value task. We only have the generic one. We would need a non-generic one as well. It represents two of those three things. It could represent a T or a task of T. What I proposed was allowing it to represent the third. We introduce an interface. In this case, I called it iValueTaskSource. We add a constructor to it that can take one of these in addition to the constructors that take a T and a task of T. And most of the functionality that's on it just works. If all of the functionality just worked, I think this would be uncontentious. The contention comes from the fact that not everything that you can do with a value task today, you would be able to do with every possible iValueTaskSource implementation. In particular, because the very nature of these things is they can be pooled and reused, today you're given a value task, it's essentially immutable. You can await it any number of times, you can hook up any number of continuations and whatnot, because tasks allows you to do all those things, because once a task completes, it's never going to become incomplete again. But if this wraps something that can become incomplete again, and could have been given out to somebody else, then if you try and, for example, await this multiple times, you may actually be awaiting something that you no longer own. On one side, the argument is, well, that's like the 0.01% case, and let's just use the thing we already have and augment it. And the other argument is, well, we already shipped this thing, and it's very closely tied with the semantics of task, so let's add something else with a name that is more closely tied with just being an awaitable, that has less guarantees, and we can craft the surface area to be the minimal thing that we want, and dissociate it a bit from task. And so the question is really, in my mind, do we augment value task, or do we add basically a copy and paste of it with a different name?
So I talked with Christopher briefly. My general feeling is that, and that is something that is more like a judgment call on people like you that know how this stuff works, but if it's literally like a 0.1% case where you can observe a behavior difference, I don't think it's worth it, because effectively, having come up with a new name that is basically a task but not quite, you just increase the concept count people have to wrap their head around. And I think if we say, look, it's basically a task, but it's a struct, so there are some things that are different because it's a struct, I think the name is close enough to be true. So like, then it's just, well, yeah, you read the doc. If the vast majority of our customers is able to write, great, probably repeat this whole rant. Yes. Yes.
At least the live stream is still working.
I think I heard was read the docs.
Great, so you almost heard everything. Great, I don't have to repeat the entire rant. So then, I think we are close to like just calling it value task and say, if there's more you have to figure out, then it's the docs as usual. Because if the majority of the code that you write doesn't observe the behavior difference, seems fine.
No, I mean, the vast majority use case is, if you're calling a space synchronous, call the method. If you're calling an asynchronous one, you await asynchronous method. And if you just do it as one as one line or one statement or expression, rather, just await foo, there is zero observable difference.
Right.
It's when you separate those and you get a reference to it and you start calling things on the instance that you can start getting into trouble. And if the await whatever is the 99% case, then the 0.9% case is, well, I actually do want a task, and so you call .asTask on it, and then you party to your heart's content on the task. And then it's that remaining 0.1% where you're doing fancy things that you need to be very careful. An example of fancy. Sorry, go ahead.
So what's the behavior I observe if I do multiple awaits? I just get the wrong await, or we blow up?
It depends on implementation.
Yeah.
Oh, because it is tied to whatever machinery you hook it up to. Yeah, that's true.
Because it's an arbitrary implementation, who knows what it's doing? I mean, you could implement an I-value task source that is effectively immutable to the extent of task is, and then there would be no problem awaiting it multiple times. Or you could have an implementation where, as long as you haven't done anything to the API that you got it from, like as long as you haven't called read again, it may be that the thing you got back is perfectly awaitable multiple times. And then there might be other implementations where it just you get somebody else's data.
So it basically you either get the right result or stale data. There's no. Is there any other error condition besides stale data?
No, you could screw somebody else.
Yeah.
Or like it'll throw in uncompleted.
You can throw, right?
Like pipe supports only one callback. So if you try to call uncompleted multiple times, it'll explode. If you call getAwait or getResult, it wouldn't block like it used to.
Right, but for example, with those semantics, you could cause somebody else to blow up.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, if you call uncompleted.
If you race with them.
Yeah.
So why in pipelines is completed cannot be called multiple times?
Because we don't want to support. Well, for flush, it could work. For read, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Because you have this ability, you read, then you advance. Multiple.
Well, I'm saying like if you call it,
it's very expensive. It's fairly expensive to implement because the implementation, if you consider something reusable the moment that getResult has been called, for example, then you have to do reference counting to determine how many times onCompleted was called, and use that to determine whether whether all of the things that have signed up with you have completed. And if there's then a race between people calling onCompleted and getResult.
I see. You basically don't want to the race to result in incorrect value from is completed, because you could basically just like return the last value that you had on this thread. But fine.
Something else.
Yeah, you probably have to.
The reason I'm not concerned is because asTask is the escape hatch.
Yeah.
If all goes wrong, you call asTask, and then all is fine.
Okay, yeah.
And you have to know to call it.
I know.
The only thing.
Yes.
Well, so this is where, I made a comment, kind of a suggestion, to add a property to value task saying, like, am I special?
If we really wanted to, enable peering under the hood like we do with memory and whatnot, we could add a, tell me about the implementation of this thing. Is it backed by a T, a task of T, or an I-value task source of T? If you really wanted to do something based on that, we could expose such an enum or whatever.
I think
it might help in some optimization scenarios.
Yeah, maybe. If you want to get the actual tasks backing it.
Well, I would say it's so. I would say the only scenario that I could imagine is if you write some kind of combinators. So basically you write combinators to accept value task, and then you check, am I special? Okay, if you're special, then let me give you, pull out task.
But then
or just call out task.
If you're not special, then it's a task.
Then call out task.
You have to get task anyway in the end.
You can't not allocate. So if it is special, then you call out task. Right? And you allocate.
Yeah, interestingly, the one that seems to be more value would be if the value task of T was actually wrapping a T rather than a task of T or an I-value source of T. Sorry, if it's wrapping a T or a task of T, you can cache the thing to your heart's content because it's never going to change. So it's only if it is the, as Christoph says, the special one that you might need to call as task. If you call as task on that backs a task or back by a task, there's no allocation. It just returns to you the original. You'd have to call it if it was the special one. But if it was a T, we would actually end up allocating a task of T to wrap it, even though it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
Value task Marshall.
Value task dot stabilize. That will return a value task that follows all the rules.
It can be used.
Yeah.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like it'll either await what's inside or just return itself if it's
I like it.
task-based.
I think it's good.
It just needs a better name.
Be serious? It returns a value task that's about
Well,
the
it
task.
avoids the problem that basically
If you want to
It's
know.
free.
it's free when you have T inside. It just returns the same value.
Well, the other nice thing about it, if you pick the right name, is it kind of conveys the very fact that such an API exists, conveys the fact that if you don't call it, you can't trust that it's stable.
Value task as value task.
As a better value task.
Freeze.
Freeze.
No.
Big. Complete.
Finalized. So what would it do? It would basically give you back a value test that is, frozen.
No, not
If it was wrapping a T or a task of T, it would return this. If it was wrapping an I-value task source, it would return a value task that wraps .asTask.
Yeah.
I see. Convert to multi-evade.
Stabilize seems fine.
Yeah.
Oh my god, stabilize. No, it makes the F-15 unstable by default, and you have to call
No,
it.
it is. It is
No,
unstable
it's not
by
unstable.
default.
It's just like
Stability is not guaranteed.
get. Ugh.
I mean, I think something like making multiple,
There's a word
like
for this.
make multi-await or something,
There's a word for this.
may be good enough because it basically conveys what. First of all, it conveys that if you don't do it, you don't get it. And secondly, like it kind of describes of what.
It's more like
Configure multi-await.
It's more like snapshot, right? it's like yeah, snapshot. All right. You want to snapshot the current state.
To me, it's mostly about like reading the name. Do I know what I'm getting when I'm not calling the method?
Preserve.
It's like preserve. So like preserve, snapshot, freeze, bake,
Sustain. A word that nobody would know.
Are you searching for synonyms on your phone? Yeah, that's what I thought.
So you take in a bunch of value tasks and then you call.
Or the other alternative is we just accept the fact that if it did wrap a T, it may allocate, or we expose, an indication of which thing it is, and you get to choose what you want to do.
Just because you cannot come up with a good name.
I like the method now. But I do think it's more like snapshot. Value task, like as value task snapshot. There you go.
Preserve is not bad.
Preserve is not bad. Anchor is not bad, but it's bad.
Basically, preserve means I want a value that I can store for later.
Preserve is good.
Okay, yeah. It's like, it makes it storable.
Yeah.
And
as preserved value task? Or just preserve and
Preserve.
Preserve
It
async?
can return this if it's already.
Yeah.
Preserve is the name.
Okay, use my proxy, you have to beat that name.
What
Make multiple times work without crazy issues. No. This is not the only thing that will work.
Yeah,
there are many other things. Steve has a list of like 5 things that don't work with the value task.
Oh, it's like give me promises.
So Steve, put on your PM of the TPM library.
Preserve.
Do you like preserve?
Sure, why not?
Preserve async.
It's
Part of the
quite
deal.
flexible. Christoph forced us to remove one preserve.
Well, because your method preserve was not doing this.
It was actually preserving things.
It's like preserving things.
Up in the ref count.
It was retaining.
retaining.
So there's the part that's introducing a non-generic value task. Preserve on the non-generic value task has no value. I mean, there's no benefit because the only, like, a default value task is a successfully completed operation with no result. So there's no allocation. We just return task.completed task as task in that case. Do we still want to preserve for similarity?
Yeah,
that's fine.
So I also noticed that you have get result on the non-generic task that returns void.
On the awaiter.
It's for the exceptions.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, but it's actually that's just on the value task awaiter, not on value task itself.
Yeah.
All right, so
That's required by the compiler.
Task works the same way.
That's the same.
I know. It's just when you look at the method, it looks very weird.
Question.
Get result returns void.
We can use, on this interface, we can name these things whatever we want because the compiler, this isn't directly awaitable, so we can rename these to our heart's content if we like.
No, they're so similar.
Yeah. There's good
consistency. Value task source on completed flags. That the use scheduling context, is that like the same context?
So yeah, use scheduling context is continue on captured context. It's the bool argument to configure await. I didn't want to just call it continue on captured context, A, because that's a sucky name, and B, because we also have the execution context, and so it's ambiguous what context you're referring to. So I made up this scheduling context name. I'm open to any other alternatives if people have them.
Why not call it use sync context? Sync.
Well, it's not just that, like when you await a task, it's not just factoring in synchronization context, it's also factoring in the task scheduler. And I thought maybe in pipelines you might also want to factor in the pipeline scheduler. I don't know how that works. Yeah. It seems like there are potentially multiple sort of environments you might want to factor in.
There's Okay, so the implementation is supposed to capture the same context when what is set.
When use scheduling context is onCompleted is called by value task.
Yep.
It calls interface.onCompleted. It passes in these flags, and the implementation, if use scheduling context is set, is supposed to capture the current context, and then when the operation completes, use that to invoke the continuation.
Yeah.
Task works somewhat similar with uncompleted and dangerous.
I know. The only thing is we'll
have the feature. The bool.
Doesn't have to be there. It could be on the outside. It could be in the pipe where we schedule the scheduler.
Yeah.
On the same context.
Then we'll allocate.
I know. Well, yes, we allocate.
Yeah, but we'll figure it out.
What's the difference between is completed and is completed successfully? Like, what's the return type of those two methods?
And it's cancelled.
Cancellation or faulted but done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is completed successfully is there. It's not, well, it actually is necessary to make the public API of value task reasonable. But it's there, it's pretty common to say, well, not common. As an optimization in various places, you might do something like, you get back the value task, and then if the operation is already completed successfully, you just get the result. If it hasn't, you do a bunch of other work before and after awaiting it, like registering, for cancellation or something like that. And so you can have sort of a fast path if it was completed successfully. That does raise the fact that I have omitted here is faulted and is canceled. Is faulted on value task I've just implemented as not is completed and not is completed successfully. Right. And I just had is canceled returning false always for these things. We could expose both is faulted and is canceled, and I could make them work on value task. The reason I didn't was because if it does wrap an iValue task source, we effectively need to call is canceled before we call get result to know whether the exception that emerges was for cancellation or not, in order to determine in as task whether to fault or cancel the return task, which means that instead of 2 interface invocations, we've now got 3. But we could say, well, that's the price we pay, and we expose this canceled, and we maintain as good parity as possible.
Is there ever a case where we may regret that choice because it's interfaces, right? It's very hard for us to add that in the future.
Well, we would regret it in a case where we actually wanted, we wanted to allow an implementation to have the tri-state of successful completion, exceptional completion, and canceled completion, rather than just successful and exceptional. Task maintains such a distinction. I'm not sure it was a good idea, but it does.
Pipelines is canceled on the result itself. Return. So
Sorry, say again. What was the question?
Sorry. So pipelines has is canceled, but on the T, not on the awaiter itself. If we added it's canceled, I don't know how you get it.
So why don't we have a property something like status, and it returns it basically returns you not flags, but returns you just one of the values of an enum. So you call it once and you get the status as opposed to having to call multiple. Like it's completed successful.
And the task related, right? The task flags.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah. Sorry, you guys went in and out for a minute. Are you saying rather than is completed and is completed successfully, have a status that returns like a value task source status enum?
Yeah, exactly. And then, it allows us to expand it in the future, and also it's one call to get the status as opposed to several calls.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that's reasonable, I'm thinking.
The thing, if it's faulted, are you really going to do anything other than call getResult? I mean, I'm trying to understand what you do with that information.
Well, it's let's see. So someone can, yeah.
The only one that actually seems like I'd use it is completed successfully, because I want to say, look, the common case is, all right, a success case that is already completed, and I can get the value right now and not worry about exceptions or blocking or anything like that.
The biggest reason to have is canceled is purely so that value task.isCanceled can work correctly. Because value task is the only, like these interfaces are purely for the consumption in value task. No one should be consuming these things directly.
Right.
So the only reason to add those is so that value task surface area can remain sort of, functional.
Okay, so you're saying we'd add the get status on iValue task source, but for value task itself, we'd expose as is completed, is canceled, something like that?
We already do.
Okay. Oh, no, I know they're there. I'm just saying we wouldn't expose a method on value task itself. Does that get status? Correct. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. We just need to figure out what that, I guess the enum would basically have 4 values: incomplete, success, faulted, canceled, or something like that. Are you guys still there?
I'm here.
I think they disappeared again.
Oh. Yeah, something happened.
Can you hear us?
Not yet.
Do we exist?
This might be good.
Hey guys.
Might be good.
Hey, welcome back. Yeah, I have no idea what you last heard me say.
Basically, when you were asking whether everybody was there, we kind of realized we could hear you, but you couldn't hear us. We had some mic issues.
I got a question. So, is it a contract violation that if it's canceled is set, that get result has to throw, or can it not throw?
It could not. Well.
Say yes.
That's interesting.
Because here's what I want to do.
Wait, you want me to say yes? Wait, what do you want the answer to be, David?
I want it to be that it doesn't have to throw.
I don't know that if it's explicitly documented anywhere that value task does that. I think that's in what situation would it be canceled and you wouldn't throw?
You're right. Say that again.
When would you want to not throw when it was canceled?
So, Pipelines has as part of the T result an is cancel flag to avoid throwing, because it kind of communicates state via
But in that case, you're giving back a valid result, and the result itself communicates something. So isn't that actually success?
Yeah. I'm trying to get rid of the is canceled on top of the result itself. But yeah, you're right.
Oh,
Also, get results call would reset the.
I mean, I don't know how else. Like if you await, remember that. If you're just awaiting this thing directly, which is the 99% case, and you didn't throw for cancellation, and someone just assumed that the result was valid, seems like you'd have a whole bug farm.
Yeah.
But this is always something that you could address yourself via a customer layer, for instance, within pipelines.
Today we do. So it's today the result itself has the is cancel flag, and it's kind of outside of the actual task, and it works fine. It's just not great.
All right, so I have one question. So, as I said in the email, I think this makes our async model awesome.
Amazing.
It's basically, we've been thinking for a very long time how we get from just having a task that is very heavy, we added value task, it improved the situation, and this is the next step, it makes it awesome. There's one flaw in this model. There's almost no flaws, but there's one. You can only, if you have a type that has two async operations and they both return an int, you cannot use this model.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, would it be, now I'm kind of almost brainstorming, would it be possible to add additional type parameter to this thing?
Then do T1, T2, T3 to just
to basically be able to implement this interface multiple times on the class.
On the same class.
Yes.
With different operations, with the same result type.
Correct.
Wait a second. The alternative though is you can do that. You just have to have multiple objects to support that.
Well, that's the whole point. This thing. The value of this whole feature is I have one object and I don't have to have allocations for async operations. But it only works as long as the operations on this object return different types.
How would value task know which interface, how does that even work with generics?
Yeah.
Well, no.
You have to value task to be of two generic types too.
It's a virus. Generics are a virus.
I see. If basically we had a base interface and then the sub interface has two parameters. To pass it to value task, you would have to cast it to the base interface, and then the compiler will not let you implement the base interface twice. I see.
So the workaround is wrapping the text into a struct, right? And then that won't work.
No.
It wouldn't even work.
Okay, we cannot solve this.
Another source of continuations.
Yeah, we cannot solve this problem.
Are we gonna ship continuation source implementation, the lightweight thing?
No.
So Jeff was asking the same question.
Yes.
My difficulty here is I've now implemented a few of these, and they're all subtly different. I think we should at some point, but I think it would take some effort to figure out what the design for that thing actually looks like. and B, to actually make it as broadly usable as we probably want it to be, I think it would probably need to be a struct, which is like super dangerous.
Mutable struct.
But yeah, and I haven't actually figured out exactly what that would look like, but it would have to be a struct because often you already have a different base class you need to derive from. Like in network string, or in sockets rather, I implement receive and send async on top of socket async event args. I have to, whatever this interface is implemented on, it has to be a socket async event args, or I have to allocate something else. And if it's a socket async event args, then I can't derive from some other object. So I either need to allocate this thing, or it needs to be a struct.
But it cannot be a struct. It'll get boxed when you create an instance of value task and pass it in.
No, the struct would live on.
Like, you still need to pass reference to something to a value task. So you'll have to allocate the thing, no matter what.
And then that object would.
Did it cut out? Did it drop?
Yeah. It says reconnecting.
You're like, yeah, of course. Of course.
The server connection is all fixed. Can you guys hear us? I know I'm
Your
saying.
mic is on.
Can you guys hear us? And the answer is no.
What do you box? Nothing is boxed.
Yeah.
When you create instance of value task, you need to pass I value task source.
This.
Are you guys back?
This. What would
I missed the last 45 seconds of the discussion because Emo was paused again.
Yeah. If we decide to ship a type that allows you, if we ship task completion source for value task,
You have a struct that lives in the.
yeah, then you need to implement type on itself, and then you have a struct that you call into to.
The struct, yeah. It's the same
So
as
you
type,
implement pass through
It's pass
into
through,
the struct.
Yep.
So it's not entirely task completion source. It's like completion holder thing.
Yes. It's like type avoidable.
Yeah, it's like type avoidable.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about like real thing. You create a new bar. And
You could do that, but then it's okay.
Yeah, but it's resettable. So if it's long-lived multi-operation thing,
yeah,
it's like sequence position, but for
The issue with any of these things being allocated, and counting on pooling to help eliminate like 2 allocations instead of 1, there are a bunch of situations I think we're going to face where you might end up, for certain operation, you might end up pooling just 1, and then if you had additional operations kind of concurrent with that, you allocate for those, and so you optimize for like the one at a time case. That's what I do in channels now, and that's what Socket does. It assumes you only have one at a time, and it allows you to have multiple, but if you have multiple, it just allocates a throwaway, and I wouldn't want those to be extra expensive.
Yeah, okay.
Makes sense.
I have a question on iValue task source. We have get result which returns void so that we can have support.
Yeah.
But the non-generic value task will not have the result property. Why is that?
Why won't it have a result property?
Yeah.
Because value task does not have a result. Non-generic value task does not have a result.
But the generic value task would.
Has a result.
Yeah.
It would be only a waiter. I believe task is symmetric in that regard. Or I believe task is similar in that regard. The non-generic does not have.
That's correct.
But the waiter does.
So then.
So we lean towards keeping the value task or having it evaluatable?
I vote for keeping value task.
Me too.
Especially with this new nice method.
Preserve.
You can make sure you are safe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, I don't know how we feel about Mads not being here in the room and us making a decision without him.
I would say I will talk to him in person and we'll see how that goes. I think the other thing is, to me, like the most important thing is to have a list on action items of what we just said, and like what I have is basically 3 things. Like I have the preserve method listed. I have the discussion on the naming listed, which I just added, and then the last one was the cancellation thing.
Well, the enum instead of is completed and is completed successfully.
Yes.
Oh, Steve, one more question. how large is value task? What fields does it have?
2, right?
Single one, right?
Value task of T has 3 fields: a T, an object, and a byte, basically.
And what?
And a byte for
likes.
So the issue is we need to distinguish. There are 2 flags that I need to pass around for efficiency, and I've opted to do so by making value tasks slightly larger. And that is, the awaiters need to know whether they're configured or not for continuing on the captured context. And value task itself, now that it has an object field that can be multiple things, we either need to type test, or we need to have a bool that indicates whether it's a task or this interface. And I've currently opted to do that by having basically a bool value, so that I don't have to type check, and then I use unsafe as to cast.
I see. So
type check.
So we could get rid of that byte field. It would make I'd have to type test, and it wouldn't actually make like the configured awaiters already need that extra bool, basically, so it wouldn't actually make those any smaller, and those are the ones, it's the awaiters that end up getting stored in the async state machine.
Yeah.
So from a heap allocation perspective, those are the more important ones, and the extra thing doesn't really affect it.
So the reason I was asking is that another approach we could explore to allow multiple operations of the same return type is if value task could store like a small int. Let's say we had like 4 bits. You could basically implement 8 different asynchronous operations returning the same thing by like always passing this int back to the source.
And the source has to like switch on int.
And the source has to switch on int.
It's like virtual dispatch via the byte inside the task.
How does the value task know what value to pass in?
When you return it, you give it the value. You basically say, I'm operation number 1, I'm operation number 2, or I'm operation number 3.
Constructor has an ID that you pass in, and then it passes that back to the interface?
Yep.
But it also, if we have an int, we can make a cookie thing, right? We can,
cookie is hard. The reason the cookie is hard is because you don't want to. Cookie can roll over. Cookie can roll over, so you need a lot of bits to make it.
Well, but I think I agree with Pavel. If you were going to do that, if you were going to go the steps of having an integer that you pass to the constructor and then have that passed back to the interface, I think I would say that ID, that value is opaque to value task, and the interface can do with it what it wants. It can be anything. It could be 0, it could be a cookie, it could be an interface.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the same thing. You can just use it to virtual dispatch or for
its position. But but the problem is that you basically, I'm saying we don't have a lot of room in value task to not make it bigger. So we already have a byte, and you're using, if I understand correctly, 2 bits from the byte, so we have 6 bits left. That's only like...
Well, you have 6 bits, but, I mean, no matter where you use this thing, like, it's going to get expanded to, if this is 32-bit, it's going to get expanded to at least 4 bytes, and if it's 64-bit, to at least 8 bytes. So there is room there.
Yeah.
So you could get 30 bits if you want to.
Yeah. Well, it gets expanded depending on T. Like, if the T is, 3 bytes, then...
If the T is byte, then it gets exactly aligned with the boundary.
Yeah, I know. But, so, Steve, what do you think about this? Just having an, opaque number that we pass back and forth between value task and this source. You would ignore it if you don't care.
Having free space in this byte would allow us to add features later. And if we expose it right now, we would have to add another byte if we decided we want to store another bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
If we give away 6 bits of this byte, the next time we need to store another bit, we're like, oh,
more bits.
We need another byte field.
Well, sure,
this round trip.
But we just use the 6 bits
round trip
for something.
A big int.
We can start without round trip.
I mean, if people think they would really like, if people are concerned about kind of the awaiting again, I mean, a cookie is a way to address that. So if, you know, passing an integer around, or we could do it as a short or something. It's also the kind of thing, well, I guess we can't add it later because the interface can't change.
Yeah, we cannot add it later.
Well, why not? We can add another interface. Right.
So it comes down to, we need to get things right. Can we just leave this as an open design point? Because I really think we have like 25 minutes left, basically. Yeah. I would like to...
what about this one? Steve just thinks about this.
Yeah.
Like, if it helps in safety, and in addition lets you implement the interface multiple times, and maybe, since Steve, you have performance tests, I think what they worry about is performance, correct?
No, yeah. I'm worried that it's only 6 bits. It's a bit weird.
Well, I don't think it's, I really don't think it's just 6 bits. I think it's at least 30 bits.
Yeah, so you're willing to expand it to int?
It's already int.
Effectively, it already is. Padding is going to make it that way anyway.
Depends on T, right?
Yeah, but no one's going to return that byte for T or int.
That'd be funny though. Like, that's a byte? That's that as a frank.
Yeah, if T was a byte or a bool, then you're right. Anything else, basically, is going to be...
Bool makes sense.
Bool makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or anything else that's bigger. Like, it doesn't have to be exactly 1 byte.
No, but once you much bigger, then it kind of... You diminish it. Yeah. I think it only matters for byte, which transitively it can be an enum. Enum backed by a byte.
Are we going to give 30 bits or just like 16 bits?
So why does that matter?
What exactly matters?
Like the total number of bits that you have inside your structure. These guys aren't really being boxed when I want them. Actually, these guys should not be boxed. So
just copying things around.
So you copy it over the stack.
You're fine.
So the thing is, if you have a T field and a byte, aren't they going to be in different registers anyway, even if the T field itself is just 1 byte? Otherwise, looking up the value of each one is going to be painful as far as processors go. Like, isn't the JIT going to want to
often
different registers anyway?
You think that structs would get onto registers, but oftentimes they're in the stack space.
Yeah, but if there's
it's also just
inside. Would you allow taking int and like just limit its size because we need 2 bits of it, or would you expose it as a byte?
Well, if we wanted to limit the size, we would just trim the 2 bits. Like, give you an int, but like high order bits are always 0.
Oh, we'll have to check in the constructor.
Who?
Well, the test constructor would have to check. Like taking int.
Yeah, it would throw if you said.
So you would take an int and it would throw if it's.
Yeah, because we don't have a representation for 30 bits.
Maybe
maybe you should use the last 25 minutes of this design meeting to create a 30-bit integer type.
I would say expose byte.
Let's see if Jan likes it.
We keep some space for ourselves.
So I just added this as like this one. I think we need to close on the name. I think that's something that I want to do today offline, and then I think otherwise we're good with the design module of the open issue that this is discussed. Right? Yes. Anything else with builders or anything else we haven't looked at?
What do we want the enum to look like?
Yeah, I think that's something that I would like give you as an exercise for the reader, like to actually come back with the proposal because you probably know what it is.
Okay.
Don't we already have an enum for task? I thought you already had one for that.
Internally, yeah.
Oh, no public. I see.
Actually, it doesn't.
Emo, your action item is to follow up on the name?
Yeah, and then yours is to do the remaining design issues.
which is the enum.
The enum, and then the thing we just talked about, maybe.
The enum probably would be like a task state, correct?
Right. The preserve one is the other one, right? I think that if I think we're happy with the name, as happy as we can be, but like make sure it actually works. All right. So then,
can we go back to the syndication thingy? We reviewed the wrong thing.
Why?
Sorry, before we do, can we do 27 to 29? I think it'll be like 1 minute. Hey, Emo, we can't hear you anymore.
Beeping you out. 2-1?
Ah, the fun of conference calls. I forgot about that.
2-1.
I missed it. All right. So what's the final proposal that they have?
Okay, go up, 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 up. Slowly up, slowly up, slowly up. We will see.
Pipelines in the preview one.
Ish.
Oh, I blame them.
They fork before.
They're there, but they're not in the same form. They're like.
Everything in the arcs looks like.
It's on to get.
Okay, so let me just.
The CoreFX lab one.
Yes.
Not the, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Now they have like ginormously long.
Oh, now it's
Oh, what?
event args without events.
Where are the event arcs?
Wait, do we
First daytime args, so it's just args.
By the way, I think events need a do-over in BCL. Events just like are bad all up. Yeah, we don't.
Alright, so here's the thing that they propose after I cleaned up some of the name qualification.
Delegate.
So let's ignore the argument names for a second, but like I think the try-parse delegate makes sense in general. You agree with that?
Should be called callback.
Okay, ignore the name, but just the shape. Like, and then naming-wise, yeah, we should do this what we said earlier, and we probably should call this. I don't know.
Not args.
Maybe. I don't know. Why is it even
Args.
called daytime args?
Oh, if we're adding a type, why not add a real type? Why are we trying to stick things into delegate when it's obviously a typey thing?
Oh, why not you inherit and create your parser?
Yeah.
For your interface.
Yeah, so we talked about this at the first review. They basically said, geez, in a lot of cases you just want like one-liner, like...
And you create a
It's
delegate.
like iComparer. Most of the time you want that one that you can create compare dot.
Yeah.
I see.
I'm fine with the arguments. I just don't think I would call it arcs.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it args
If
either.
it's arcs, it better be derived from event arcs because that's kind of the only arcs that we have. Otherwise, I would just call it, I don't know.
Oh, back.
Call it what it is. Sepoko.
No,
Daytime.
the struct, the name of the struct.
Yeah.
Yeah, daytime.
Uh,
Raw daytime. Raw URI.
Parse daytime.
Sounds
Input?
like a verb.
Daytime parse context.
I like input actually.
Context is nice.
Parse context.
We call everything context in ASP.NET.
Yeah, that's why it's not nice actually.
Parse daytime context. It requires the context to parse.
Let's just call it parse date.
Parser context. What does Roslyn call input? As parsing.
And then
Span memory and friends. Look at that. It's an entire bullet.
And the local name and the namespace URI are combined into the element qualified name. No difference.
So we gotta install this thing.
So then we said parse date time should probably be called parse date.
I'm thinking the structs shouldn't have parse prefix. It's basically XML datetime information or
context.
No, it's the actual data.
Yeah,
it's not the context.
But is
the data?
But is
what would you say? You would call it XML datetime. What did you say?
Info.
Oh yeah.
Or data.
Oh yeah.
Or data. I don't know.
Stuff.
Utils. I can't see what you're typing.
Utils. Utils class. I gotta install this thing.
Hold on. You know, like because it has nothing to do with parsing.
It will be XML parse.
No, XML URI data.
That would work. URI data. That would be data, I suppose. Yeah. And then it would look borderline reasonable. Let me update this thing. So
It's such a high bar hold on.
well, you know, even if we spend like 5 minutes on it.
An extra C#.
God damn it.
Whatever, you can use the hash, C hash, you know that, right? And,
Yeah, but like,
you're
it
lazy.
doesn't work in all editors, so I gave up on that.
Fair enough.
And there's also something about inputs. Parse datetime input. Oh jeez.
So, like, what happened here? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
it should have been just data. And this should have been...
Arta.
It's just XML datetime data. Too many date.
Just call it time data.
But it's fine. It's fine.
Happy with that?
Yes.
Ready?
XML URI data has internal parse URI args.
Yeah, why the constructors internal? Any objections making them public? Didn't hear anything, so I go with yes.
Rename the constructor names.
Yeah, I know, the constructor names no longer make sense.
Oh my god.
This is what happens when you code outside an IDE, friends. Like, this is...
Yuck.
GitHub really needs to step up their game and have a full-blown editor here.
Also, do we care about these things being immutable? Because it would be so much easier.
Yeah, why not just make them regular
Just-
structs?
Yeah.
Wait, but then callback can modify it.
So,
No, it can't, because it's struct. You get a copy.
Don't write callbacks that modify them.
but what if it takes it as an
I was gonna say, make it in.
size?
Make it in and make it read only.
It is in. It is
Nice.
read-only.
Make it in.
But it's not in.
I don't see read only.
Actually, it's passed by value, so even if you modify it, nothing is gonna happen.
Yeah, that's what I said. But now we are saying make them in.
Sorry, like, why are we doing this?
Because we can.
Well, if we ever need to add more fields to it, like having a constructor
You
with
didn't
two
fix anything.
parameters complicates the situation.
Why, just add a third one. You
Yeah,
have to decide
you
what
keep
default
adding.
name is
Why
anyway.
not just make everything like
Yeah.
get set?
What's the
why not
value
just
of
make
them
everything
being
immutable
immutable?
construct with no constructor?
Is
what's
that
the
mutable
point?
in there? Like, here, the mutable thing.
So,
Well, the other question is, why did you make it a class? I mean,
It's-
if
it's
it's
a
not
fuck-up.
going to be like
Why is it instruct? I
a
don't
high
know.
performance API.
What's struck in the first place?
Oh, let's not think.
Okay,
slower.
we can move on.
So, leave it as
I
is
don't
or
care.
change?
Yeah,
Oh my
we
god.
can leave it
Oh
as
my
is.
god.
Alright, so then, great. Hopefully I didn't have any typos in it. Suck. Alright, so 15 minutes left. Let's do, what was the one we wanted to do?
Steven mentioned that there's an issue that you would take.
Yes.
Yep.
Very fast.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Right? Alright, so
Maximum drain size.
Okay, so you make an HTTP request, you get back a response, and for one reason or another, you don't consume the full response. This could be because you get what you need and you dispose it, or it could be a redirect, and it's sending the response data and you just redirect. That's not an issue unless you're pooling. If you're pooling, you can only put that connection back into the pool when there's no more data coming in, when it's done. And so if there's still data left, you can do one of two things. You can either throw the connection away, or you can drain it. And because that's cheaper than throwing the connection and having to open a new one. If it's a large amount of data, you probably just want to throw the connection away. But the user should be in control of what small versus large is. And so WinHTTPHandler, for example, exposes max response drain size, and we're suggesting we do the same on SocketsHttpHandler. Basically, that's it.
How do you know how much data is left?
Yeah.
Well, with content length, we can make that call very quickly. We know how much we've consumed. We know how much is sending back.
Yeah.
We can read up until max response drain size, and if we haven't exhausted, if we haven't finished the current chunk or hit the final chunk, we throw it away.
I see. So for chunk, it's not immediate.
Why not have a timeline instead of a size?
Yeah, we talked about that. It's certainly something that could be added. You could have both. I mean, you could go by size or time. Time is more expensive at runtime, just because you have to,
measure.
Time. But it could certainly be added if it was an issue. We started with this just because WinHTTPHandler already has it, and we already needed to basically have something hard coded. So this is just a knob instead of a hard coded value. We have not implemented any sort of time yet.
What would you set it to if you were doing this? Like for a perfectly normal HTTP connection through the internet?
So WinHTTP has a default of 1 megabyte. So that's what we chose. I believe I'd have to see what libcurls is. I think it's somewhere around there as well. So we could just pick whatever default we want. I mean, it's an implementation. It purely controls the efficiency of the pool, or impacts the efficiency of the pool.
Is this part of a security review? These kinds of APIs?
The whole implementation will be security reviewed, but this has been part of an HTTP handler, so why?
No, I'm mostly asking if these properties are coming out of security reviews, or if they're just.
It's possible this has in the past. Certainly, the max response header length has. Yeah. You have to know if you can violate the semantics of the response at some limit. This isn't really violating any semantics. This is just whether we choose to pool it or not. And if we want to pool it, we have to know how much to drain. So I don't really think this one's security per se. We can just dispose of the connection.
You shouldn't be draining more. Yeah.
Even Meg, I'm surprised that.
And Meg is big too. I'm surprised that.
They went. I just heard from Jeff yesterday that they went back and forth on this couple of settings before they finalized that 1 megabyte. It's like optimal. We can tweak it for .NET Core if we find different optimal. But we're gonna start with what we have in .NET Framework, and then we can tweak it to whatever performance we need.
Local networks, Meg is reasonable.
I'm mostly worried about security issues that end up being server security issues because the client is doing something and it's being used on the server side. This seems fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, long seems success.
Yeah, if you drain.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking, it's basically the cost, the opportunity cost is basically we just don't reuse connection yet. That's
it's not huge.
So that's I spaced out. I didn't know that. Basically, if the threshold is exhausted, we just return the collection.
We do the same thing in Castro, but then we have a timeout for the consume.
Yeah,
if you don't read the entire body.
This one without timeout is interesting.
Yeah. So we do the same in Castro, but for security reasons. So if you don't read the entire body, then we read it for you so we can keep reading requests and not have it overlap. And then we have a timeout.
But this is planned.
Clients are using the server. That's my concern.
Oh,
we'll say it's a client, and then it'll run in your MVC handler, and then you have a server security issue.
But we as a server will kill the thing. Right?
No. So I have no problem adding a timeout as long as we made the default infinite.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think this is fine too. It's not required to do it.
Make it infinite by default. I mean, doesn't that It's basically configuration that's insecure by default that we usually don't want.
That's kind of our tension that we have with Barry. In general, like.
I mean, what happens if they push back and say you have to make it, I don't know, 10 minutes? Is that breaking the performance, or like what's the problem with that?
Yeah, if it's asynchronous, you'll just open a new connection.
You wait the connection on the server, TCP, like socket for outgoing. It's resource consumption.
Or would it force you to basically like re-establishing connections every whatever the time it is?
Okay, if your server is making a request to some random other server,
that's
then
holding the connection open.
That's like
not draining.
You already have a large security.
That's true. It's not from the client. It's from something you're calling.
So Jeff, Stephen, we dropped off before. Is the unit bytes over here?
Bytes.
Yeah, bytes.
As well on MemoryHttpHandler, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Do we have a convention with that? Do we include bytes in the name somehow, or do we just say size usually?
We had like a few weeks ago something that was like kilobytes. Actually, something was kilobytes.
It was in HTTP and it was super weird because we don't have KB anywhere but that one API. I don't think. Yeah. We always do bytes.
I think it depends whether what's the negative of setting it wrong. So in this one, I mean, the negative is the code is not as performant as it could be. The other one that we discussed, there was some potential security related issue. Like if you set it incorrectly, you could be DOSed basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, we generally in the framework when we talk about sizes, it's always bytes.
Yeah, it's always bytes.
Versus in time, when you look at time, things move because in seconds, milliseconds, minutes, depending on what you do.
Those C# yes units. I mean,
which is why we have time spent on most things. But if this is bytes, I'm fine with calling it size.
Yeah, it's bytes in the size.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right, so then leave it as is you proposed. Is that?
Sounds good.
And then I think we are pretty much.
We still have Jeremy's span, right? Jeremy's path thing.
Yes.
The path one, yes. All right, we talked about this one. So 6 minutes left.
So how is it different than combined?
So combine actually checks rooting on the paths as they go along. So every time it hits a rooted path, so something that's got a backslash or C colon.
That's nice though. I love that it does that. Yeah.
You do.
I just call it and it just works.
We have a new. It doesn't work correctly all the time. That's the problem. So we do have a new path, get full path, that actually does the right behavior for what you would think path combine should work for.
What do you think this does?
Takes the left. Left one's right.
It's the current drive /bar.
Yeah. Yep, exactly, and that's the problem with it. So path get full path that has the base path on it now will actually give you a fully resolved path. And you won't get a partially qualified path out of that. This one you get a partially qualified path out of for this and for other reasons.
So by join, how does it? So I'm not sure if it solves the problem. People will have exactly question. They will be like, how is it different from combine?
How is join different from combine?
Not how it is. What you already explained. How it's different, so I understand. I'm just saying, how will users know?
How will users know?
They hit every one, they read about it.
Exactly. And it's similar to string join. It's
it is.
Fast join, similar things. Instead of slash, instead of another argument, we're using slash.
So what could we just add some suffix to combine and call it, combine?
Just combine.
Combine incomplete or something.
Fast combine.
What's the benefit?
To combine?
Because then you kind of
there's
a combine and there's a different kind of combine. They are the same. There's some small difference because it's all over the place.
The difficulty there is that there's with the existing APIs getting the right overloads and things and.
As long as it gets long.
Why not just call it a cat? It's already long. Because you basically or it seems like a catfish.
Yeah, it's also
join is already a term that's used in some of the other frameworks as well.
So you look at string, for example, right?
And it kind of goes along with string.
and string concat. Like string concat literally just concatenates them as are. Join implies there's a separator, right? Like there is an implied separator here, which just says the path separator, right?
Yeah, but under, like, if it's path.concat rather than straight.concat, like, the implication it's doing something slightly different. Because why is it under path otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, let's stay with the concat versus join for a second. Like, I think for whether we should use something like combine suffix, I think in fact we said the same other question, which is, are the existing combine ones effectively deprecated? Like, are we actually saying don't call them, call whatever you want? Because
I will actually be recommending it, whether deprecating it or not, like in the docs. Partially qualified paths. So the recommendation is not to use combine, but to use path get full path if you need that routing behavior.
So the reason I'm saying that is because if we actually deprecate it, no analyzer flags the other one, it doesn't matter. It will point you to the right one. In which case, we can decide to go with some other name.
Yeah. So combine is with that one. Deprecated and
try join method. Can't you calculate the required size? Like it's just another slash, right, in between.
Well, but it has.
Well, it may or may not need the slash.
It's like bar, if it's the other argument.
So why aren't we returning characters required if we can calculate it internally in the method and don't force people to calculate it for you?
You can. I mean, that's possible as well.
I get that this is our current pattern, but this is more for methods that do not know what they need. Exactly.
Yeah, I have no. I mean, I'm obviously calculating it, so I have no.
Didn't we say that it's okay to return this in the pattern? Like it's just because every API has a slightly different shape and it's implied what you need to do.
I think if API knows how much it needs to return.
Why is the out in the middle?
Yeah, I think
why is it in the middle? Because if we add an overload later for path 1, path 2, and path 3.
I see. It grows.
Yeah, but
that's rare.
I don't want to. I mean, like, it's been asked whether we don't have the path 1, 2, 3 to begin with, but it's fairly easy to compose.
Anyway, so if there are no params, we can put out the last one and add as many as we want before it.
Yeah.
There's no params, what do you mean?
You cannot use params with spans.
Yet.
Oh.
So this was only required only when we use params, because params has to be the last one. If we don't have params, we can put out the last one and stick as many of spans before it as we want.
Well, I mean, first of all, we can do params of span if we would decide. It wouldn't work in this case though, because you cannot have a span of span. But in many other cases, you could.
Yeah, I'm saying you cannot have params of spans, not span params.
But to me, that's almost orthogonal. Like, I mean, it's always sucky to have outs in the middle.
Yes.
I think we always have outs at the end, usually, especially when they have played.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I was just following the existing pattern.
Yeah, there is no reason to put it in the middle here.
And I think in general speaking, like even if we add, let's say, path 3, path 4, path 5, it's fine. Just insert them in the middle because out is ambiguous anyway, and it's at the end. So it's fine.
Sure.
Okay.
So then, are we happy with the API? Are we happy with the deprecation? Anyway, any concerns with that? Path combine is used a shit ton though. Like if you deprecate that, you will get like.
You can't deprecate it.
Like,
so I still like the idea of calling the method concat and join.
Right, that's
because the first two letters are the same, and you see both overloads when you start typing.
And in
people ask why there's two, and then we'll just say use concat, bro.
And also join is.
So partial uses.
This is partial.
Such a I don't know, database that
join path partial.
To be fair though, if the new name is shorter,
better.
I think people will probably generally gravitate to that. So whether it's concat or join, probably doesn't make a huge impact.
That's a good name. Combine was a good name. It's stuck on my brain.
You say that, but imagine we would ship join. Maybe that's the same argument now.
Maybe.
I
probably.
think join concat. I don't care.
Dot concat.
I can live with either one of them.
Dot combine.
So the reason we don't add the try join with 3 paths right now? Because we have a join with 3 paths?
You should do up to 22 parameters.
Oh, what's our count? Like when we do multiple parameters, what number are we going to?
Depends how costly.
I didn't hear.
Should we add a try join with 3 paths?
Imagine that your operation takes 5 days to complete. You just take array. You don't even like.
Okay, in this case, how far do you go? 4?
I think we have like 3, and then we have params, I believe.
Yeah, but
No, for the existing ones combined, we go up to 4 on their own. But
Like call it again.
yeah, come back.
Yeah. Which is not too bad. I mean, if your buffer's large enough, like you allocate the same amount of memory. Which actually is an argument to just give it a 2.
No, let's do at least 3.
It's gonna make MS build so fast.
Both of 3.
It's gonna make MS build like non-allocating.
Let's do like a value tuple does.
Value tuple what?
Okay, let's do something serious because we're running out of time. No more jokes. Let's close on this. Is this the API shape?
Out
in the end.
Oh, we said out at the end.
And it's not.
You do a dangerous create passing in the first element, and then you get a tuple. It's right to the parameter.
Hey guys, what's our pattern? Like the pattern is destination goes probably right before the out, and then both of them go to the end. Is that fair?
Yes.
is that possible? Like how do you determine which span is which?
Well, it's basically always the one right before the out, right?
Yeah.
And the out is fixed. Calling convention.
Okay.
And can we please change out to be how many characters is required, not how many is written?
You mean both?
Do you need both?
Why, like, oh,
You need both, right?
You don't know whether the backslashes will be added or not, correct?
like characters written, what do I do when I get it?
You know how much was written to the destination.
Your span.
Yeah.
Because
You slice it.
What if it's not enough? What if it returns
and
false?
it returns false.
I see. So it's not to enlarge, it's to just know how much.
You basically have to pass a span that is the sum of all lengths plus
Slashes.
as many plus number of spans.
Why don't you return?
It's minus
That's
1.
the worst case span, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In which case you can calculate that.
Well, but then you don't know how much was actually written because maybe less was written.
What if you just return span? And
No.
if it's empty.
No.
Are you guys done?
We're never done.
We are not done, but we will give you the room because you have right to the room.
Yeah, you just
You're slicing the.
It's a room.
It's our room now. That's quite a board.
We deferred adding span join. If you add that, would it have an impact on this, or should I
Did
do
you guys buy lunch?
No.
Because it's lunchtime.
Right. But would it be
We are online, by the way.
I think we probably wouldn't be able to do that particularly.
I did your breakfast.
Alright, guys. By the way, one more thing. Oh, okay. Let's stop it.
This is basically like
We might do it offline.